Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. We'd like to thank you all for joining us. And, I think we all can learn more when it comes to recruitment and how to use recruitment as a branding tool for our companies. So we're excited to speak on this topic. I'd like to thank you all for your time because I know it's your work day and you've made the time to learn a bit more. So thank you for joining us once again. Just by way of introduction, I am Rose Govender. I am the General Manager and a Specialist Recruiter at Pro Talent Recruitment. I've got collectively more than 15 years of HR and specialist recruitment experience. And I think all of our experiences over time has given us some knowledge into this topics that we can actually share with our clients and candidates that are joining us today. I'm joined by Demi van Doorn. She's going to introduce herself to you.
Hi, thank you for all being here this morning as well. As Rose mentioned, I am Demi. I am one of the recruitment specialists, talent acquisition specialists at Pro Talent, having joined the team in December. So I think it's fair to say Rose has obviously been at Pro Talent for a while. I'm our most recent job seeker. So I feel that I have the experience to also enlighten everybody what a candidate experiences, obviously, in an interview process. So really looking forward to sharing our knowledge today.
Absolutely. I'd like to encourage everyone to make this an interactive session. It's quite an interesting topic and we all can learn from each other. We can also learn from you. So if you have questions or comments, we would encourage you to put that into the chat box and we will try and answer as many questions as we can towards the end. There's also a giveaway at the end. We usually do this at all the webinars we do. So if you, you're keen and you might be one of the winners at the end, stay to the end. And and let's just learn from each other this morning. We don't claim to be experts, but I think we claim to have some knowledge in this arena. And I think that's, the point that we're coming from. So again, we all are open to learning this morning. I'm just going to start the slides just so that there's some context that you can look at in terms of what we will be sharing about. Okay, so I think I just want to start off by just highlighting that sometimes I think a lot of our clients or a lot of employers don't really see recruitment as a branding tool. And I think today's webinar is just to open up your understanding a little bit more on how you can make sure that every time you are conducting the recruitment process, it does become a branding opportunity. And the reason I say this is because there are quite a few benefits to any company that would take the time to invest in their recruitment process. And I think the powerful tool that it is, a positive employee or candidate experience can significantly enhance your brand as an employer. It can make your company look like an employer of choice to the candidate that's being interviewed, and it can, in some ways, foster or bring top talent to your company. I think we must remember that we in a space or on a market where there's a whole lot of candidates, but there's also top talent, which is what we all are competing for. And I think that it's important to realize that if we want to attract these candidates that will come into organizations and make a difference, then we need to also in some ways invest in ourselves as companies and in our recruitment process as well. Demi, I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this.
No, definitely some great points mentioned there. I think the one thing I would like to say is obviously candidates do sometimes have a very negative experience when they attend an interview, and this does and can deter them from actually considering an opportunity at your company. As most people are obviously seeking a better culture as part of their next career move. And like Rose said, let's face it, it is a candidate-driven market when it comes to top talent and those hard to find skills. So
absolutely. Yeah. And Demi, do you want to maybe just highlight us on what will the candidate do when they hear about an opportunity in a company per se?
So what are the first things that a candidate will obviously do when they hear about an opportunity at your company? Maybe we should just share the
yeah, sure. Perfect.
There we go. Okay. Oh, it's quite the thing, hey?
Mhm.
Okay, so what is the first thing a candidate will do when they obviously hear about an opportunity at your company? Well, obviously, we are in the digital age, so the first thing they are going to do is they're going to research your company. They're going to go to Google, they're going to go have a look at your website, have a look at your LinkedIn profile. They're also going to check out your reviews. So it's not only your Google reviews and what your customers or clients are saying about you, but it's also the employee review boards like your Indeed or Glassdoor. What are your previous and current employees saying about you on those platforms? And more importantly, how are you responding to those negative reviews? They're going to visit your social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, if you're there as well. And I think the one thing that we don't always consider is they are going to ask around. They're going to ask their network. They're going to post on the social media platforms asking, has anybody had an experience there? And they're going to maybe ask their colleagues that have previously worked there as well. So a lot of ways that they can find out more about you.
Absolutely. And we're seeing this more and more with our candidates, in the sense that they are wanting to come back to us as to whether they're going to consider an opportunity. They want to go and do all of this type of research and then let us know if they would consider going for an interview with a candidate, with a client rather.
Absolutely.
So I think we can't stress enough, the importance of making sure that that you at least do these things, that you at least are aware that candidates are going to be looking at these things. So it's avenues that you can improve in your company as well. Get to the next slide. Okay, I think I wanna talk a little bit on what they'll find out about your organization and how we can actually improve on that, right? There's some very easy and quick things that we can do and implement quite quickly, and then there are some things that we would need to do some investment on, right? So when you look at your website, is it inviting? Is it reflective of your culture, your vision, your mission? Probably you'd want to add in expansion plans in the company, employee wellness, anything to do with enhancing your company when anyone, whether it's a supplier, whether it's a customer, whether it's a candidate is looking at your actual website, you want to make sure that they're seeing the best version of your company. I can't tell you how many times, I think you'll agree with me, Demi, that we would ask a candidate to attend an interview, and then they would say, can you send me the website? And the company doesn't have a website. And I think in a way we need to understand, in the world that we live in now, it's a deterrent, because it would somehow make a company look unstable, or that they haven't been around for a long time, or maybe they're a startup. And with the way people are, and especially experienced candidates that are considered top talent, they're looking for stability. They're looking for companies that have a good carbon footprint. They're looking for companies that have made their mark. And if they're not able to view this on your website, then they're going to have second thoughts about joining a company that does not at least have a website that can share that. And, I often think like you could be doing lots of great things as a company, but if you're not sharing that with the world, then nobody's going to really know about it. So I think it's important, if you don't have experts within your company that can develop the website for you, go to a professional and just get it done. At least there is some information about who you are and what you represent or what you offer in terms of services and products. Encourage reviews, offer incentives to employees, suppliers, customers for them to review you, because let's face it, when we are looking to buy a product, what is the first thing we do? We're going to look at the reviews on that product. So I think we have to understand that when employees or prospective employees, or when candidates are looking for jobs, the first thing they're going to do is look at the reviews of your company, look at what your staff are saying. I think websites like Glassdoor, and they'll look on Google, your Google reviews. So I think if you can have better, or if you can have more good reviews, it obviously makes your company look like a place people would want to work at. So I think look at your reviews, maybe go and have a look at it today and see what reviews are on your company and see how you can improve that. And there's nothing wrong with offering incentives to your staff for them to put on reviews on the company as well. I think it's important to have a social media presence. We can't ignore the fact that social media is part of life now for possibly most generations, not even just the Gen Z that we're looking at. I think we've got to understand that as much as businesses are there to make profit and to grow and to sort of provide their staff with income and that sort of thing, we've got to also understand that social media is equally important in displaying our culture, in displaying our products, just in also displaying industry knowledge, being ahead of the curve, understanding what's happening in your industry, marketing yourself or positioning yourself as a market leader. So I think we've got social media for the most part of it, it's free of charge. And I think we've got to maximize that in showing what our organizations has to offer as well. So, like if you've done a team build recently, or if somebody in your company has celebrated an achievement or anything like that, it doesn't take long, and it would be good to just highlight that on social media. It also makes the staff feel good, and it also makes anybody that's looking at your social media feel like you do actually invest in your staff. So I think that's important. What are people in your organization saying about your company? I think this is so important because let's face it, our employees are the brand ambassadors for our company. So, and I think, this is a difficult one. And often I would have this conversation with my clients because every company has its good and bad. Every company has its pros and cons. But I think it's important to understand that mostly or to some extent, your employees should be saying that it's a good company to work for. And I use this funny example all the time where I had a candidate that went for an interview, and she was sitting at reception and waiting to go in for her interview. And one of the employees walked past her and said, "Oh, so what job are you coming here for?" And she said, "Let's say bookkeeper." And he said, "Well, you don't want to work here." So I think it's so important to, and it's quite an extreme example. And let's think about it. She would be going into that interview with that mindset. Oh my gosh, can you believe somebody actually said that this is not a nice place to work? How much would she give in that interview? So I think it's also important to just make our staff aware that when we have visitors or people coming into the company, we need to be warm, we need to be friendly, we need to make sure that the person has been attended to at reception. I think the first impression that a candidate gets when they come to our company is so important. Okay, so do you want to give us some tips after all that?
Perfect.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
I will say that story will never not shock me. Definitely. But yes, a few tips on how you can use your recruitment as a branding opportunity. Firstly, I will always say, be respectful and considerate throughout the process. I think we often feel employers will often feel that because they have many options and they're busy interviewing many different candidates, they don't need to actually put in as much effort because they've got so many options. But this can actually cost you really great candidates. And I mean, we can't do that. So we have to just be respectful and considerate, and avoid a lengthy, complicated interview process, and recruitment process. We often have candidates that will just drop out of the process because it's too drawn out. 3 recruitment interviews, an assessment here, then coming to spend a day with the team. It's a lot of time and energy and money at the end of the day that's spent. So it's just something to be aware of. It's just too much sometimes. Avoid delays with decision making. I think this is a big one, especially with your higher caliber candidates that have many opportunities that are floating around. In the time that you are taking to make a decision whether or not this candidate is right for you, they're already receiving offers from other people and considering those offers because you are ultimately too slow. So I would say also highlighting your mission, your values, and your culture also is a massive way that you can use this as a branding opportunity, because it will help candidates see how they can align to what your visions are for the company. One of my favorite ones, because we hear horror stories sometimes from candidates, preparing for the interview. As an employer and interviewer, it is important and you should make it a priority to also prepare for the interview. We can't expect our candidates to prepare for an interview and then have our clients not prepared. Grabbing the CV from the printer on your way into the interview and then reading it in front of the candidate really just shows the candidate that you also haven't taken an interest and they don't feel valued and appreciated that they are there. Because for my last point, the candidate is also interviewing you and the company. So as much as you are trying to find out if they would be right for you, they are also sitting there and assessing whether or not they want to work for you.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that's really important. But I think, Rosie, you've also got a couple of tips to add.
Definitely. I think that, whether a candidate is going to be successful or not, this entire process is so important because it can do two things. It can make or break a candidate, and it can also make your organization look like an organization that nobody should work for, should you get it wrong. So I think what Demi shared is so important. And, our tips come from the horror stories that we do here. And I think that sometimes we are a little bit like exaggerative of the points, but I think it's necessary in just explaining, you'd not think this, but this is what we go through on a daily basis as well. So just to add a few things to that, provide all the important information about the job. Now, the last thing you want is an employee joining you and then 2 weeks into the job, they say, well, you know what, this was not what I was told in the interview. And how many times do we see that? All the time. Exactly. So I think explaining the entire role to the candidate, what a day in the life of the role looks like, what they can expect, the pros and cons of the job, so that they can make the best informed decision. The last thing you want to do is hire the wrong person. And the last thing you want to do is start the employment relationship wrong because they feel you've been dishonest in the interview process. Rather be open upfront. I always, when I'm interviewing for our team, I'm laying all my cards on the table. This is the pros and cons of the job. And I don't want you to experience any surprises should you decide to take this opportunity. And I think we need to have that approach because let's face it, every job has its pros and cons. And like just an example, recently, a candidate was going through an interview process with a client. He went for 3 interviews. And in the first interview, he was told there would be some occasional Saturday work required. By the time he interviewed with the executive for the 3rd interview, the executive said, well, you'd need to work 3 Saturdays a month. And despite the salary being better for the job that he was interviewing for, despite the location being good, the growth opportunities, all of that, he declined the position. So basically what that means is that his time and all of the people that interviewed him, their time was all wasted because he wasn't given the information upfront to make an informed decision. That information should be given to a person that you're calling to ask to screen for a job before you even bring them in for an interview so that nobody's time is wasted. And it would obviously have left a bad taste in his mouth because he would be like, you know what, I went for 3 interviews and all of this time and effort has been wasted because they never told me that it's 3 Saturdays a month and that's non-negotiable for me because I need work-life balance. That's an example, but again, providing all the information with regards to the job is extremely, extremely important. You don't want a candidate to have gone through 2 interviews and then you realize they don't have a vehicle and this job requires the person to have their own vehicle. So just those very important non-negotiables should be discussed. Create a comfortable and welcoming environment. Welcome the employee, the candidate, offer them something to drink. Like if your strategy is that you do a panel interview as the first interview, put yourself in the candidate's position, walking into a room where there's 4 or 5 of these big managers and you, this candidate that's coming in for the interview, already you're not going to get the best out of them. And I think it's important for us to realize that we've taken our time as the interviewers, we've taken the time off the candidate, they've taken time off from work, or incurred the expenses, and they're coming to present themselves to us. We should maximize this opportunity. So if you're going to create an environment that's hostile and that's cold and where they feel interrogated, you're going to get very little out of them. They're not going to be comfortable enough to open up about themselves, about the experience. They're not going to share their achievements with you. They're not going to give you the best experience, and you might end up losing out on a good candidate.
Absolutely.
For that reason. So I think it's so important to create a comfortable environment because then they'll just spill all the beans. They'll tell you everything about themselves, about their family. And remember, you're also trying to listen or look out for red flags as well. So if they're not comfortable, they'll give you the version of themselves they think you want. They won't open up about everything to do with them, and you might not pick up things that in your mind are non-negotiables for this job as well. I think the next point, and you can jump in at any time, Demi, because she probably would have one or two things to add. But I think listening, I don't know, what do you want to say anything about listening at all? Listening attentively.
I would definitely say, obviously, Rose, as Rose just mentioned, creating that comfortable environment where they are just sharing.
Yes.
When you're listening attentively and practicing that active listening, and not really going in with the approach of listening to respond, you're listening to understand. And by doing so, you will pick up on the red flags. You'll be able to hear, like, well, they've just mentioned that maybe what's the word, it goes against what they previously said, but
Yes.
because you're actually listening, you're not interrupting, you're letting them speak freely, you'll be able to gauge a bit more and get more information out of them.
Again, another example, because we talk on what we experience, right? I had a candidate that went for an interview and she came back from the interview and she said, Rose, the manager was yawning throughout the interview and was cutting me off when I was trying to speak. And so I don't really think he was very keen on me. I didn't get the feeling he enjoyed the interview with me. And like, is that the impression we really want to leave with a candidate? I think when they're trying to talk to you, and if you, let's say, get up in the middle of the interview and take a phone call, or you're trying to message somebody while the candidate is talking to you, or you're looking around the room because you've now noticed the wallpaper, or anything to that extent, how does that make the candidate feel? Even if they're not the right candidate, because you know what we do sometimes, and I've had to realize this about myself. While we're listening to the candidate, we've realized they're not the right person for the opportunity, right? And that's okay, because not everybody's going to be the right person. But because we've made up our mind, we become disengaged in the interview. But remember, every candidate is also a brand ambassador, because they're going back to their families, their friends, everyone they know, and they're telling them about your company and what they've experienced. And if somebody that they're telling is a potential candidate that you'd want to interview at some point in the future, and they have learned that ABC manufacturers is actually terrible, they interrogate you in an interview, or they don't listen to you, or they're just disrespectful, they're gonna say no for an interview with you. So I think understand that even if the candidate is the wrong candidate, still leave them with a pleasant experience, because they're going to refer candidates to you. Or they might not have the level of experience right now, but 5 years down the line, are they going to be the right, let's say, graphic designer for you, or accountant or bookkeeper? So we've got to look at the holistic approach when we're thinking about candidates. And again, like Demi is saying, it goes back to listening. It's so important to listen attentively, because that shows the candidate that you've got the respect that they need in the interview process. And I think being transparent and offering constructive feedback is so important. We struggle with this as the middleman, as an agency. Sometimes the client will come back and say, sorry, the person's been unsuccessful. Okay, but why? What did they not have? Were they not strong enough in experience? Is there something that they can maybe improve on? It's nice to give candidates this feedback, because they are on a journey themselves, and your feedback and your experience with them will equip them for their next interview. So I think we've got to think a little bit bigger in terms of leaving people with the right sort of impression as well. And I think, I'm going to end by saying that, like, we need to consider the time and the effort that it takes for a candidate to get to us for an interview. Have you thought about their travel costs, the time that they would take researching, the data costs for assessments and online interviews, time off that they would need to ask the employer for? Would you give your employees time off all the time if they've got 2 or 3 interviews and an assessment? So I think it's important for us to take into consideration that actually they've made an effort for your interview, and we've got a responsibility to give them the time of day and to see things from their point of view, so that we are ultimately hiring the best talent for our companies as well.
Yeah, well, thanks, Rose. Yeah, that was a lot of good points there listed, actually. It is said that people are the most important asset in a company. And if that is true, then every candidate, like Rose said, is a possible employee who deserves a great experience during the interview process. At the end of the day, I couldn't reiterate that more, that they will go back to their friends and family and colleagues who perhaps mention ABC manufacturers and say, oh no, you don't want to work there. This was my experience. They wasted my time. I waited for 3 weeks with no feedback, only to be told I'm not successful. So I think it is such an important thing that, you know, treating people with respect and just appreciating their time and effort is a massive element to the recruitment process.
Absolutely agreed. So I think just a few points to consider, and this is just again from our experience as recruiters. There is a lack of skilled professionals on the market. So, you know, I think we all have this idea that, you know, we've got a very high unemployment rate, so there should be tons of people all sitting waiting for our jobs. We can tell you otherwise as recruiters. I mean, we are not short of job specs as a recruitment agency, but we are short of skilled professionals for the roles that we're looking for. So make no mistake, there's a lack of skill in our country, and not just for like what we're thinking in terms of, let's say, artisans or engineers that are all running away to other countries. There's a lack of skilled professionals for things like accountants and really good bookkeepers, and so it's not position dependent. It could be in any industry, and it could be in any specialization or skill, but there is still a lack. So I think it's important to realize when you're interviewing and you interview a really good candidate, don't wait to interview 10 others before you can make a decision, because the companies that are the quickest, and I'm not saying you must scrimp on your recruitment process. I'm not saying you must you know, leave out anything that's important, because there are things that we need to do to find the right people, and it needs to be a process a lot of the time. But if you're too slow, then it means another company is going to end up with that person that could potentially come into your company and add massive value. I think Demi mentioned this, but we need to be aware that candidates are interviewing with other companies. Sometimes our clients will fight with us and say, why didn't you tell me that the person had interviews with 2 other companies while they were interviewing with us? Guess what? They don't always tell us either. And let's face it, if we think about ourselves as people, everyone's trying to get the best deal with the cost of living, with all of the challenges in life. The traffic, the construction, even everyone is trying to get the best deal. So they're going to be interviewing concurrently with other companies, and they're going to take the best deal. And what I've learned, you know, you often would think that candidates will just take the best salary. It's not always the case. I think that people are looking for a few things, what I've realized. And like, I've had a candidate that took the lower salary, but had a better interview experience with that client and felt like that company aligns better with him from a values point, and just from the way they treat the employees, just from the way they interact with their suppliers and their customers, from all the research he's done, versus another company that offered him more money, but he felt the interview process was cold, and they didn't paint the picture of growth to him, and he felt like he would join and just be another employee. So sometimes it's benefits. That's the determining factor. People want a provident fund, they want medical aid, they'll take a lower salary, but they want stability in those things. So I think understand that if you cannot offer the better salary, you've got to have other things that you're offering. You've got to be able to sell your company on the things that offer a competitive advantage versus your competitors. You know, we look at the likes of like a Google or a Derivco, let's say, and these companies are the preferred, let's say, employers, and we think they've got a chill room and they've got a
nap pods,
pool table, all of that. And I think lots of companies strive to do some things that can make their companies you know, better. But I also think equally important is having the right culture, because, you know, I had a candidate that said to me, yes, I joined the company, they've got all these cool things, but actually they're not, it's actually a very toxic work environment. So you've got to, and I think us as business owners, as HR, as office managers, or just hiring professionals, it's a challenge for us, because you got to try and get it right on in every way, not just have all the nice facilities and then the bad culture, or have the good culture but nothing from an infrastructure facilities point. So I think having that balance is important. And if we're speaking to the decision makers or the people higher up, we need to start thinking of what our strategy is going to be, because this is what top talent is looking for. Another thing is hiring the right candidate is important, because let's face it, the reason I'm saying this point, and it's such a broad point, is because it's an expensive exercise. If you think about from the time an employee resigns, you've got to advertise, then you've got to contact agencies, then you've got to interview, your cost per hour, then you've got to make the hiring decision, train, induct all of that. And then if it's the wrong person, you wasted all of this money, all of this time. So I think if we try harder to get it right in the interviewing process, we most likely will get it right in terms of the rest that follows. When I say that, I mean induction and training and investing in that person. So I think it is important to understand that this is an expensive exercise, and if you get it right, then you're spending less time doing it over and over again, right? Creating a talent pool is important. So when I say this, I mean, you know, the saying, don't shop when you're hungry. Always be looking for talent. Encourage your employees to refer talent to you if you're the hiring manager. Where there's positions in your company where you need to start looking at succession planning, start creating a pipeline of candidates that you can look at for future. Start interviewing them, just have them on your database. Just create a relationship with them so that you can always call them when the position is available. I think it's so important to not hire in a big hurry and then hire the wrong person. So start looking at the positions that you believe are critical in your organization and start putting together a talent pipeline that you can look at if for some reason people retire or they resign, or they leave for any other reason. I think I want to end with saying, consider that the perfect candidate doesn't actually exist. It's sometimes we often say this, we get excited, we're like, I found the perfect candidate. Really, are they perfect? Because obviously we're not selling robots, are we? We're selling people who are layered. I call them onions. But basically, I think we've got to understand that when you interview and you find a candidate that, let's say, meets 80% of your criteria and you see massive potential in this person, don't hesitate. Don't say, let me interview another 10 people and then I'll make a decision, because chances are by the time you're interviewing the other 3 or 4, this person might be gone to another employer. So as much as we do need to interview a few people for a position. Sometimes we find like that employers have a very lengthy recruitment process, and then they'll interview 3 or 4 people, and because they haven't found that one person with everything, they want to interview another batch. I think it's important to realize, the saying goes, you can train skill. I think if you find somebody with potential, you can train skill. So if you find a person has matched your spec 80%, rather consider them and let them learn or develop into the areas that they don't have experience in, if they are feeling like a good fit for your organization as well. So yeah, the perfect candidate doesn't exist. You've got to look at what potential a candidate you're interviewing does have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think so. Just a couple of things to add to what Rose has said. With regards to the offer at the end of the process, I think we know where we live, we know the country we live in, and we also know the current economy that we're in. The cost of living is rising, and obviously, how often we ask a candidate, like, what are your salary expectations? And it's kind of like, well, how high can I go? Because, or we ask them, why are you wanting to leave? And they say, well, look, I need more money. We all need more money. So what does that look like in terms of the offer that you are offering the candidates at the end of the process? I think it's so important to be fair and generous and really understand the candidate and their value that they will bring to your company. Don't try and squeeze the candidate down in order to get them in, because you have a budget and we understand that, but it also it's a little bit disrespectful to the candidate if you're not necessarily coming in at a fair amount at what they have asked for. I think it's also important to see the bigger picture. Not all employees are going to stay forever, and that's just the reality regardless of the industry, but they will add massive value while they are there. And I think the one thing to really consider as well is understanding an employee's why and what motivates them. And not just when they start with your company, but also in 6 months' time, in a year's time. Claire in reception at 22 years old, she's excited, she wants growth, she's on her career path. Claire at 26 years old is now settling down, a work-life balance is now important to her. So see the bigger picture when you are onboarding your candidates, to understand, okay, this is what my employee is looking for now, and this is what's going to drive them to stay at my company and be the best that they can be, and also be happy at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And then ask again at every annual catch up, find out what's motivating them to live a good life, I suppose. And then, having said that, employee induction. I see I missed an L there.
Well, we were wondering who picked that up to see who's still awake on our webinar.
Yeah, you passed the test if you did. Definitely make this a priority. Employee induction is so important, and I must say, I commend Rose. The one thing that she has done with the staff with us at ProTalent, we actually get trained by every member of the team on different areas of recruitment, because obviously we all have different values to add. And that also, I would say, from my perspective, it gave me an opportunity to, meet the rest of the team, spend some time with them individually, which I think was amazing, and great way to do an induction as well. But make it a priority to reach out, do the regular catch-ups with newer staff, find out how it's going. Where do they feel like there might be a challenge, and how can you support them? Do they feel like they've been supported? But really make it a priority that they feel seen and appreciated and welcomed to the team, especially during their probation period, obviously, because sometimes this is where it may fall short. And then, as Rose touched upon in the previous slide, a candidate referral program. If you have a candidate referral program in place, I think the one thing from my side that I've realized is I have and don't tell anyone because I don't advertise it, but I have a candidate referral program that I use with high caliber candidates. And just to understand that not all candidates are going, well, employees in this aspect, not all employees are going to want a cash injection, because what's 500 Rand or 2,000 Rand, or not everybody is going to want to go for that. But if you don't have a candidate referral program, maybe think about other ways you can reward your employees for referring great candidates that have passed their probation period. But maybe it can look like vouchers for different shops, or meal, like a restaurant voucher where you're treating them and their spouse or their partner to go out for supper, experiences like a Segway tour, for example, something that's different, that's like, oh, that's really exciting. Or even something that I have considered, because I know obviously I can't match people's salaries with a referral program, is a charity donation in their name. So offering to make a donation to a charity of their choice in their name, to thank them for referring one of their previous colleagues or friends that obviously help your business.
That's excellent. I think just to add to what Demi is saying, you would want your great employees to refer other people to you, because birds of a feather flock together. I think if they're good, then their referrals will be good, and they also know everything about the organization, so they wouldn't want to refer people that they feel would not work for your culture and your organization. So I think that there's definitely a lot of value in that. We do it at ProTalent, like I incentivize staff to find recruiters if we're needing, or any position that we have, because I always believe like your best people will find the best people, and everybody must be included in the process as well, because when you bring a new person in, they've got to work with the entire team. So actually, it's easier to say you brought this person. No, I'm joking. We've never done that. But I think from a inclusivity point, it's important for the team to have buy-in when a new person starts, because then everyone's invested in helping the person win, and that's important. It's just creating or fostering that type of environment. And like Demi will tell you this as well. We will help our clients get the recruitment part done very well, because that's what we specialize in, and we'll facilitate that whole process. And everyone's excited, the employee, the employer, our client is happy they found their person, and guess what happens then? It all falls down in induction. So I think it's so important. We do a whole talk on induction, because there's so much information that can be shared and this can make or break a new employee in terms of how successful they become, or whether they stay or leave. But let's not also understand that induction is such an important part of this entire process, and helping a person get through their probationary period. I've had many candidates, I've had employees that in the beginning, I'm sure Demi, you as well, it's like very stressful. You feel overwhelmed,
Yeah.
information overload. Then there's all these targets, there's all these KPIs that you've got to have. You've got to train on a program, you've got to train on a process. It can become all too much. So I think hand holding in the beginning, maybe a buddy system, somebody else in the team that can just make sure the person's okay every day. If you as a leader, you have lots of things going on, but just making sure that like a new person is treated well and felt or feel like they are taken care of. Yeah, and seen in the beginning is so important, because otherwise they become disengaged and they actually will leave. Or they'll be, and remember, at the point when you made them an offer, they probably were receiving other offers, and they probably took your offer and they said, okay, let me see how it goes. So the other companies that were interested in them, could still be interested in them. And I think we must take all things into consideration. But I think more than that, it's about making sure that you're hiring the right people, but when they get there, that they're actually staying and they are finding value, and they're able to add value quite quickly if you make them feel safe and comfortable to do that. Like I've had lots of people that have joined us and right in the beginning have come and said, why do you do things this way? There's an easier way or there's a better way. And we find a lot of value, in that regard. So also just realize that the quicker they feel part of your company, the quicker they'll also start to add value as well. Yeah. So I think those are just some of the things that we felt that we want to share with you. Oops.
There we go. There we
Yeah. And just to help you through your recruitment process. But I think the end game or the goal of today was not to slam anyone or any company as such. It was just to say, this is the reality that we're dealing with. This is the feedback we're getting from our candidates. When we're talking to our clients, this is what we're experiencing with them in terms of how they've handled the recruitment process. So what can we learn from that, and how can we be better? And more importantly, like I've had a candidate, very senior candidate, he went through 3 interviews and an assessment, and he was unsuccessful. But he said to me, Rose, I understand why they would have chosen the other candidate, but it was such an amazing experience with this company. So if ever they have another position that they could possibly consider me for, or if down the line they're looking for somebody in this position, I would be happy to reconsider, because it's definitely a company that's on my bucket list that I want to work for. Equally, I myself have been for interviews with the very big corporate companies, and I must be very honest in saying, just as an example, and I think we have a little bit over time, but as an example, I went to a company for an interview, and was the glass building, it was the very fancy reception area, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm actually here, pinching myself, all of that, because I felt that this was so above my league. And when I had the interview with the hiring managers, it was for a recruiter role, I was blown away by the fact that in my mind, I had said to myself, I would never want to work here, because they were in some ways very condescending in the interview. I didn't feel welcome. I didn't feel like it was a good vibe in the team. I didn't feel like I would be treated well in the team. I didn't feel like I would be able to win them over because of the way in which they structure their questions, or they cross-question my answers. It's not an interrogation in an interview, it needs to be a warm, friendly discussion, and you're trying to get out of it. I actually didn't even share my achievements with them, even though at that point I was a highest biller in the company and I was very successful with whatever I was doing. I didn't even get to the point of sharing those things with them, because I just felt like, no, I actually don't want to work here, even though the building is beautiful and though the reception area blew me away, and whatever the case may be. So I think it's so important, that experience that candidates have with us, because everything counts. The way your facilities, your attitude, the experience with you in the interview, how other people engage with them in your company, everything counts towards their experience with you as a prospective employer. And I think we've got to ask ourselves the question at the end of the day is, what would the unsuccessful candidates say to their friends and family about you? Because how many people are they talking to? 20, 30? How many people are those people talking to? And that's how we end up having the reputation sometimes that we have. And Demi will tell you it's a hard one for us, because our client will come back sometimes to say, can I interview the candidate? And the candidate is like, actually, I've had a change of heart. I've done some research, and I don't think this is a company that aligns with me. So if you could please just let the client know. And we've got to go back to the client to say, it doesn't happen often. We've got the best clients, but I'm just saying that we've got to go back to the client and say, actually, the candidate is no longer interested in the opportunity. let's not be those companies. Let's
Yeah.
not be those people. Let's rather work on what we can and what is in our control. And I know with some of you on the call, it's a conversation you need to have with management or with the powers that be, but change starts with us, even if it's in a small way. And even if we can take some things from this talk just to say, this is what we can implement or change, I think that would be ideal for us in talking to you today. So I think at this point, we'd want to just check if we have any questions in the chat box. I don't see anything, but does anybody have any questions? You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask, or you're welcome to put the question into the chat box. We've probably got about 5 minutes. If there's anything that you need to ask us that you've heard during this talk. But this is a very nice crowd. Everybody just loved everything we said and understood. Anything, guys? Any comments or anything that you need clarification on? No. Okay, great. That's fine. So while we're just wrapping up, if there's something anyone thinks about, you're welcome to just put that into the chat box. But we've come to the end of our talk and to the end of the information that we want to share with you And I think, do we have a question? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we just have a comment saying it was very interesting. And I think this is Nolene. Thank you for sharing your experiences and knowledge. Maxine says, thanks, great presentation. Okay, we appreciate the comment. Thank you. At least we know we were on the right track. Yeah, so we just want to quickly do a lucky draw. We have 2 of Cindy's books. Cindy Norcott is our director. One is How to Be Unstoppable in Life and Business. And the other one is How Does She Do It? So we've had a randomizer and we've done it just to save time, and it's randomly chosen a number. So we're going to tell you that number in terms of the registration list and who the person is.
And if you are here, please let us know.
Yes.
If unfortunately that person isn't here, it's fortunately for you, we'll redo. So we got number 17 and it came out as Gina Hinchlife.
Are you on the call, Gina?
Is Gina here?
I think I just...
Hi, Gina.
Howdy.
Congratulations.
Can you hear me?
On a book.
You won the How to Be Unstoppable book by Cindy Norcott.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We will get it sent to you.
So we'll get in touch with you. And then we actually have
thank you.
a book to give away. And that is for Sinotanda Ntuli. Sinotanda here? Okay. Okay, we'll have a...
Thank you.
Hello, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Amazing, congratulations. So you have won the How to Be Unstoppable book, and we will get in touch with you. We've got your details, and we'll find out where we can send this through to you. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
Melanie, do you have a question?
Hi, yes, I actually put it in the chat group, but I think you might have missed it. Is it ethical to say that only shortlisted candidates will be informed of the decision?
I think if you've called a person in for an interview, then either way, just give them some feedback. Like we would, if we send, that's our principle. If we send a candidate out to a client for an interview, the fact that they've made the effort, you've gotten to know them, you've experienced them as a person, it's just rather better to say, unfortunately, you were unsuccessful. We are moving on to the next round with stronger candidates, but thank you for your time. It doesn't have to be anything too long.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I think I saw another question. Was there?
Running the induction webinar.
Okay.
Will you be Jenna?
Maybe we should. Okay, so what we'll do is I think we have done it once at the beginning of the year or last year, and we've done a talk on this many times with an in-person talk, but I'll add it to my list for let's say the beginning of the year, and then you'll see all the adverts on our social media. So then you're welcome to join, and it would be a free webinar. So yeah, I think thanks for that. We'll definitely run that because we've done the content before.
There's one new.
Can I ask you something, Peter?
Is there anything else?
Not that I can see.
Thank you everyone for the amazing comments saying that you loved the webinar and that lots of people are saying they're interested in the induction webinar. We're so happy that our content has helped you. I don't think we put our email address, but my email address is very simple. It's rose@proappoint.co.za. If you've registered for the webinar, you would have Jamie's putting it into the chat box, and then you can also put your own email address as well. If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to email us. We will do our best to give you the best possible advice that we can. So yeah, feel free to email us, and thank you for your time, for all the lovely comments. It's too many to
Yeah,
share.
so
So
many.
we're very excited that everyone's learned something from this webinar, and we wish you a great day going forward. And thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. It was good to be here and spend the morning with you. Have a good day.
Great.